Yeah. Enough of us. Are they good? It's a waffle. Whatever works with Sarah.
Did you bring these?
No, I brought them.
Oh, these are great.
I first had them in Amsterdam, and they were so good.
Oh, nice. They actually taste like syrup, so too.
Hi, Ellen. Good to see you. Good to see you.
Totally. I've sublime. Those Dutch are smarties.
Yeah. I poked my head out once and said,
Oh, how funny.
no way. But all those positive thoughts helped.
Right.
Okay. It's your turn. Yeah, Salidra. Wait for the mic. Yeah, thanks. Good.
So I had a big day yesterday. I'm going to India, and
Yay.
yes, and I suddenly couldn't find my passport, and I was just taken over by the amount of the physical manifestation inside of me. I was incredibly anxious. I was so scared that I wasn't going to find it, that something had happened.
Can you
called
talk
to
right
see if
into the
I could.
mic?
I called to see
Yeah.
if I could get another one. Talked to some people, and that wasn't very fruitful. But my question, so after I went through the initial shock of not finding it, and the trouble is I'm very tidy, so I couldn't. There was very little that I could go to like if I had a big pile of stuff, I could have spent a few hours going through it.
Yeah.
Didn't. So I was like, okay, where's my equanimity? And what I found my mind doing, it was such an interesting process, was I realized I place meaning to things, like, oh, so if I don't have my passport, maybe I'm not supposed to go.
Oh, yeah.
So I started attributing meaning to all of this, not having the passport, and all the different ways that could have an outcome. And then I started questioning, what is that? I don't think that's equanimity. I think that's rationalization or something like that. I don't know. But so I started questioning for myself, well, what is really equanimity? Because I was definitely attached.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really hard to let go of the attachment unless I said to myself, okay, there's something greater than myself that maybe like this is, I'm not supposed to go. So anyway, equanimity.
Yeah. So do you feel more equanimity today about it?
Well, I found it this morning.
Okay.
I found it this morning.
Yeah, we're all feeling better.
Oh.
Salidra.
And it was so amazing. It was anyway,
Yeah.
it was just sitting right under a piece of
Yeah.
paper.
Yeah.
And it was like, I've got my passport, and I was talking to my dog, and we were, I was like, oh my gosh, the thrill of finding it was so intense.
Yeah.
Well, that's not equanimity
That's
either.
not it either. Right. But it sounds like you noticed all these states of mind as you went through them. That's the practice. You recognize the states of mind as you went through them. It's not in my experience, it's not realistic for me to expect myself to shift from what my mind is actually doing to some other state like that, simply because I know the information. So, yeah, we want to aim for equanimity. We can talk a little about what that is. But more important, the practice in this lineage in particular is noticing the state of mind that is here right now. Slowing down and being with it, and not trying to push towards something else. So it's as though equanimity is a goal, and we want to have that. We can especially nurture it on the cushion. And whatever we nurture on the cushion becomes what shows up off the cushion. So there's quite a good common contemplative meditation about equanimity that I'll just describe. It goes like this. You imagine in front of you 3 beings, one of whom you're attached to, one whom you have aversion toward, and one you have meh, don't care. Stranger. So friend, enemy, stranger. If you don't like the word enemy, some people feel that's too strong. Difficult person and neutral person. Then you sit there and you work with them in your mind, in your imagination, asking yourself some key questions. Why do I feel this way about that one, that one, that one? Looking at the answers. Then where does this feeling come from? Where do these thought patterns come from? They're not in the beings. The one we think is difficult, someone else loves them. There are people who love our friend Donald, love him, and he has helped them. He's given them jobs and money and, some kind of sense of importance. So they hold him fondly. So there's nothing in him inherently that's lovable or not. This is all rising in our minds, right? So we make the friend, we make the enemy, we make the stranger. The one called stranger to us is beloved by some others and not liked by some others. Think about that for yourself. I'm always quite upset to think some people don't like me. How could that be? But it's true. It's true. I could connect you with them. And they would tell you some hair-raising story. But that was Zopa of the past. So there's nothing inherently precious. I mean, there is inherently precious here, our Buddha nature, but all of these identities and all of that, all the things that rise, they're just like this, just going by. So that's the sense of equanimity, is the recognition these are just going by. We don't have to grab them. We don't have to push them away. That's when we create a world of craving or of aversion. So the equanimity is simply the calmness, the peace of mind that comes from realizing this is all fluctuating. This heap of aggregates here, it's made up of material things and thoughts and emotions and history and memories and plans. But try and grab any one of those. Even you can't grasp your body in a moment. Modern science tells us that. We don't even have to go to Buddhism for that one. These cells are just sloughing off every day, change. There's nothing that's worth grasping after, nothing that's worth pushing away. Yet we do from habit, so we can meet the anxiety with equanimity. hi, anxiety. Hello, anxiety. That's what I'm doing now. Anxiety is my big shtick. And you just meet it with equanimity. I'm now kind of talking to it when no one's looking, so they don't think I've gone mad. But just say, hi, anxiety. I see you. Oh yeah, I feel you. It's very physical, isn't it? It just, like you say, it can just grip, and it starts here. You can feel nauseous, break out in sweats, whatever. But just say hello, sit down, have a cup of tea. How you doing? And right then and there, I've noticed when I greet it, it goes down. Just greet it, just see it, and don't make it a bigger thing. So I really love that you brought up that way we cast meaning onto things. Then we're making the story. So that may fool us into thinking, oh, it feels a little better to think it's got meaning. But no, now we're piling on to the original anxiety, another layer. Is that true? Just let it go. What's it made of? Thoughts and emotions. Grab one of those and show it to me. And show me the solidity. Can't do. And it's shifting so fast. Even you notice the physical sensations, and you really stop and notice they are shifting so fast. Oh, I feel in my gut. Oh no, now it's up here in my heart. Oh, now my hands are kind of shaky. You just notice and let go. The thing is, we are so subject, all of us, to judging ourselves. I should be feeling equanimity, not this. But we can't feel equanimity till we culture it on the cushion. Then it will rise naturally. We won't have to try for it. Still, we want to hold it like a guiding star. We still want to hold it. So it's great that it came to your mind, But to try and do what we can't do is something to notice too. Oh, I'm trying to do what I can't do. It's like having a 4-year-old say, run the marathon, run the marathon. You just make them unhappy, yourself unhappy. So, thank you. Yeah, Joe.
To continue along the lines of Salidra's question and what you were just saying about judgmentalism, but to add a piece regarding responsible dharmic practice concerning PR and Buddhism. On the way here today, one of the news reports was on the radio about the predominantly Buddhist Burma, ethnically cleansing the people, the Muslim people, and my companion was, that just sounds terrible, and I immediately said, well, that's not Buddhism, that's not predominantly Buddhism. And a friend of mine emailed me recently who's not a practicing Buddhist and said, gosh, Joe, I see these pictures of monks, beating people and what's going on. He wanted to understand like how Buddhism produces this. And my response was, it's not Buddhism. It's, it's like when the analogy I gave him is how it's the KKK says they're Christian, but it has nothing to do with Christianity. Jesus would not recognize that. And that's what I said is, this has nothing to do with Buddhism. Shakyamuni would not teach that this is good behavior, and it's not Buddhist in any way, is what I said. And I find myself feeling a responsibility to do that every time this gets said, or somebody says, oh gosh, look what the Buddhists are doing in Burma. And I immediately say, no, that's not Buddhism. And I am wondering if it would be more helpful for me to somehow work on equanimity and to say, okay, well, yes, they're Buddhists and I don't understand it. And yes, they're ordained monks and they're far more educated than me. And if this is, or is it more helpful for me to do what I'm doing, which is to call it out and say, no, the Buddha Dharma is a real thing. And this is not it. This is actually anti-Buddhist. And I do believe that in my heart. I don't have any question about that whatsoever. I think I've studied enough Dharma to know that. But I'm just wondering, is it is it more helpful? Which one would be more which is more helpful to do for each other and for everyone?
Yeah, I'm so glad you're thinking about this and bringing some clarity to it clearly. So for those who don't know, there's a minority group in Burma called the Rohingya. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it right, but they're a minority group of Muslims who've lived there for decades, and they're being driven out, and a lot by the government and Buddhist monks. And it's being quite brutal. And the good part is the world seems now to be paying some attention. So, it's difficult to find our way through these things. They are named Buddhists, and they wear monk robes, and they call themselves that. So we could acknowledge that. And then we can also acknowledge, just as you said, that humans distort religions constantly. Humans distort things. It goes through our prism of our own stuck again in aversion and, attachment. So they call themselves Buddhists, and it's distorted. And I liked your, not that what I like is important, but I think your analogy to, people who call themselves Christians and then act in very un-Jesus-like ways, that can help people see it. I think the thing that, for me, works with situations like this is to take some cushion time, or even a few minutes whenever you hear it, to send compassion to the monks doing that, to realize the depth of their suffering. They have vows, Buddhist vows not to harm, and they're violating their vows. When we, through our confusion, violate our vows, we put a lot of barriers between ourselves and meeting Buddhism again in the next life. And they are also, let's even think if they weren't monks, just anything we do, we're back to the issue of karma here. Anything we do like that, it sows seeds that will come back around. There's no seeds we sow that do not come back around to us. So we can then have a heart for these guys. They are so confused. Just look at the depth of the confusion. Bad enough someone, layperson, does this, but to hold those vows and then do it and to give that model to the world, that's just off base in every way. So there's a huge confusion going on. There's history there that we don't know. There's complexity there that we don't know, but it never excuses that kind of violence. So I think both, you might look at your energy level when you jump to, and I think you are looking because you said I jump right away, and just slow it down, take some breath. Acknowledge, yeah, they wear robes, they have vows, but they aren't practicing. It's not what the Buddha taught. And then that opens it for people maybe to say, what did the Buddha teach? So it's more looking at our energy. And the way I get my energy down about those is see the suffering. This is the first of the Four Noble Truths. We have to see the suffering, or we will never want to end it. And that suffering is our own and of others. And see the depth of it. This goes on lifetime after lifetime. Bill said something when he was teaching Mahamudra a few weeks ago. He said, we need to look at our loyalty, our contract with samsara. That stunned me. A contract with continued suffering. He said we make that moment by moment by choosing to act in our patterns. We renew our contract to constant suffering. And how often do we renew our contract to step away from that? Our contract with the Dharma, to act with compassion. And it always has to include every single being in the scenario. So I learned this really deeply when my stepson was murdered unexpectedly and shockingly and violently on a trip in Ecuador. And I went into all the common states of mind. I mean, despair and anger and just everything. And sought help from my teacher, Venerable Chitran, who said to me, right away, you need to think of all parents. I had helped raise this one since birth, practically, and he was 23. You need to think of all parents who have lost their sons. Right there, I began to calm down. It was like, oh, I join now in a group. This is not about individual suffering. And I started thinking of all the parents who lose sons to gang wars, to accidents, to wars, and it was like, it sounds strange, but it really stopped the kind of tight suffering. And then the next thing she said to me really blew me away, and I've worked on it a lot still when it comes to mind on his birthday or when I drive by the store he used to work at, which is close by my house. She said, would you rather be the parents who lost their son or the parent of the one who killed someone? Oh my God, I just sat back, and her question just caused this compassion to rise for that mother and father whose son was on his way to prison. And how do you talk and look at your son after he's killed someone point blank? Still, it just gives me shivers. So I began to pray not just for Max and a good rebirth for him, but for Emilio. So this is one of the most direct ways into bodhicitta, is always look at the oppressor right away and wish for them the end of that suffering. And actually it's sort of key, because we so habitually go to the end of the suffering for victims, so-called victims, and we're angry at the oppressor, like these 15-year-old boys who started this fire, We need to hold them in our hearts with total compassion, along with the people that got evacuated and harmed. What were you doing when you were 15? I could have easily set a forest on fire. That wouldn't have even been hard, just out of sheer ignorance and bravado, So that's the key. Sally.
I'm sorry, but I have spent a bit of time in Burma, and I would just like to ask us all to consider the rest of the country, not just this small little window of deep, deep harm that's happening. Because my experience in the country is of a people who, and this is not just a general statement, but so many interactions of a people of grand generosity, patience, practicing their Buddhism. And this little tiny sliver that's getting reported about this country does not represent this country at all. So please hold the rest of these kind people in your thoughts as well.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you. Someone else.
I also wanted to add that there are a lot of refugees from Burma already in our community in Portland and Vancouver, and they're Christian refugees for the most part. because they've been really oppressed. And so I invite you to hold them in your hearts also. And you might see them around.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Deborah.
Continuing this theme, and you may just go back to where you've been already, but I've experienced over the last week or two an awareness that of impermanence with Harvey and the fire and Irma. I really got to a place of feeling unsafe, threatened, and very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I have a pretty regular and secure world, and it really felt seriously shaken. And I suppose the blessing is the opportunity to be with that vivid experience of impermanence, but it's also what you've been sharing is certainly some of the answers to how to approach it. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, the what it shows us, it like throws a mirror up to what we're grasping on. And when all of those things happened at one time, you know, hurricanes, fires, more fires, fires out of control, I started thinking, well, maybe this is the end of the world as I know it, and watching what comes up for me. And the teachings are that these are opportunities to kind of die before we die. So when we die, if you think this world got shook up by these things, when we die, every sense that we have will shut down, all five. So can you even imagine for a moment, no sight, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch? We can't imagine it because those are feeding in constantly. Right now, in this moment, my appearance is feeding in. There's smells in the air. You're feeling your body. Even you're not paying attention. Those are all feeding in, the sounds. Those are going to be gone. Then we go to what the Buddhists call the sixth sense, which is the mental level, because that's all that will be left. I mean, we're going to leave the body, okay? So we're going to leave our world. We're going to leave it. And we don't, generally, unless you're omniscient, we don't know where we're going. The consciousness will go wherever we've trained it. So that's why these are opportunities for excellent training. What is it I'm holding on to? Can I let go of that? Can I let go with grace? Can I let go? And if not, fine, meet that and say, okay, hi, I see where I'm stuck. That's okay. Let's look at it. So these are these incredible opportunities to do this. And then, some of you have heard this story, but I like it so much, I'll tell it. Which Rinpoche was this? Khyentse Wangtak Rinpoche, one of the quite old-time, solid, amazing Gelug lamas that I had the privilege to have some teachings with. His attendant told this story. His attendant's a Westerner named Roy, who was translating for him and being with him. And he said they were in an earthquake, and Rinpoche was in the building, and the earthquake occurred, and Roy ran in and said, Rinpoche, we have to get out of here. And Rinpoche said, Roy, sit down and take refuge. And Roy said, no, Rinpoche, you don't understand. It's an earthquake. You got to get out of here. We got to get out of this building. And Rinpoche said, Roy, sit down and take refuge. Now, this is profound. Think about it. You might jump up and run around, but you might get killed outside by a power pole or a tree. You might get killed inside. You don't know. In that moment, there's nothing to do but take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Because the worst that's going to happen is you're going to leave the body and you won't be you anymore. Consciousness will leave the body and will go on its journey. Well, it would be really good to head out on that journey having taken refuge. The best that's going to happen is the earthquake subsides and you took refuge under really difficult conditions. So there you go. You can just think of Rinpoche saying, sit down and take refuge. Oh, it's potent. I don't know anything else, and I don't remember it every time. I go through all the turmoil, all the na-na. Try to notice it.
Well,
Yeah.
I kind of forgot what I was going to, but that's good. No, I just really, again, appreciate all the, I feel like if I don't come or if I don't sit every day, then I totally lose all of this. It's just amazing how I can just go out the door and just completely forget this. I had a dream that I was involved in hanging that 15-year-old boy. I was so angry because I'm I'm very involved environmentalist, and so so I was really furious because of all the animals that are running and all that. And so I woke up and went, gosh, I can't believe I had that dream. So I mean, and so it's, again, I'm being just like you were saying, the KKK. That's kind of what I was in the dream, and for me. I always tried, one time when I saw the Dalai Lama, someone presented, a very difficult question. He's always like, why do people ask me these difficult questions? He was laughing, and the guy was saying, I can't let go of this hate. And he just kept saying, if you can't let go, then just keep trying to go neutral. Just go neutral. And I really hung to that, just go neutral. Don't worry about going that way. You're human. That's the path, but go neutral. So that's the one thing that stuck with me, because that neutral is such a Western word, neutral. So.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's a bit like Salidra's story. We can only go where we can't really go anywhere. The job is to notice what's in my mind. I want to come back to your dream about so much anger that you hang the 15-year-old. And when I have those kind of dreams, which I do, it's quite helpful when you wake up from them to do just a quick little purification of it. If you know Vajrasattva practice, just ask Vajrasattva to take that. Just letting go and seeing light in your heart, just that quick, and to create that habit, because instead we can become horrified that we've done that. Okay, so now we first had the habit that created the dream. Now we're adding something on, being horrified at ourselves, and then beating ourselves up. So now we've got 3 layers to work through. So instead, just simply saying, and if you don't have a Vajrasattva practice, just saying very clearly, may he be well, may he be happy, the young one. That's my constant trick when I'm driving my car and losing my patience and swearing at people. Right after I swear, saying, and may they be well, and may they be happy, and may they get home safely. And may they get where they want to go before I get where I want to go, because it's probably more important. And, and it's slowly coming sooner than the swearing. So it's all about these habit patterns. And all we're doing is putting new ones in our minds. And the strength of them is they're not brand new. They match our Buddha nature. So we are touching in with our Buddha nature, and it's much stronger than any of these negative patterns. It's much stronger for the reason it's in line with reality, and they are not. So whatever is not in line with reality will crumble and fall apart. We can see that, say, in the current political situation, how it keeps crumbling and falling apart because it's not in line with any kind of reality. So we stick with our reality of wisdom, compassion, generosity, ethics, and those are quite strong. Whenever we touch on them, act on them, then things fall into line. Yeah, so it's just continuing to do that. Thank you. Yeah.
It was really powerful for me this morning when you talked about the billions of people in the world that are that have no leisure time and that are just, every moment is just to survive. And then thinking about the karma and that, like, we have, how fortunate we are to have our circumstances, and then just trying to make that connection about, was it karma then that created unfortunate circumstances for so many people? I just have a hard time reconciling that there was some kind of action or that those people are suffering because of some action that they,
Yeah, it is hard to reconcile for the reason that we're still stuck on that would mean they did something bad or that they are bad. So we have to really keep healing away our Judeo-Christian view of the world, that there's a deserve and a punish and a reward. Karma has nothing to do with that. Yet it's taught karma is everything. There's until we realize our Buddha nature completely, we're never outside of karma. It rises in 3 ways. These are the classic teachings. Non-suffering karma, which we would call positive, suffering karma, which we would label negative, and neutral karma. We won't talk so much about that because it's kind of like when your action or your thought doesn't really move one way or the other. You know, the example is sleep. You're not really harming anyone when you sleep. You're not, or dreamless sleep, let's say. This is so difficult. I don't really know what to say about it, except, well, I'll tell the story I told Elizabeth at the break, because she also brought up this karma thing. Everything we experience is due to karma, and we are the ones that have created that. In Buddhism, there's no creator. There's no creator God who is handing out punishments and rewards. Our own actions of body, speech, and mind create the conditions we have. That's all it is. So if you see someone in a condition that is dire suffering, the response is compassion and a wish that they be free of it. Nothing else. Nothing like what they do so that that happened to them. It's like, for me, one of the things that karma helped with is, why would children who are completely innocent in this life die early, have a terrible accident, this kind of thing? Karma does explain that in past lives, so we have to open up. For karma to make sense, it does open to endless and beginningless time. We have been, our consciousness, our stream of consciousness, not this personality. I mean, Zopa's going to last, 85 years maybe? I don't know. But, not much longer, as I'm 70 next month. And I keep going, 15 more years, I better get on it. Because that first 15 went really fast. But I digress. So opening to beginningless and endless time, the mind stream has packed in God knows what. Buddha knows what. God knows what, Buddha knows what, of positive actions, negative actions, neutral actions. And those will all come to fruition unless they are purified, and good works purify things. Studying Dharma purifies things, because what we're purifying is the mind stream. So when we act in positive ways, that purifies our mind. When we act in negative ways, that smirches the mind up, creates those habits. It's all mind. So the minds of beings who are suffering now in the karmic teachings, they created the causes for that. Now, as soon as I say that, there's this, you know, does that mean they're bad? Do they deserve it? No, no, no. And there's nothing but compassion to offer toward them and loving kindness. You can think about it at yourself. Don't you suffer? Did you do something really bad to have that suffering? No, you didn't. You just did things that created those causes that are now unfolding. It's beyond good and bad. We're so stuck in black, white, good, bad. It's not in that box. It's difficult. So one koan my teacher gave me, because I came out of lefty politics and a deep socialist kind of background, I was always quite angry at rich people. and because my parents were working poor, they worked all the time, and I especially reacted to that stereotype that people are poor because they don't work. You know, my parents worked harder than anybody I know, and we always had adequate food and clothing, but only because of their constant efforts, both of them constant. And so I had this real anger, and I really loved communism and socialism when I ran into it in college, because it seemed to explain so much to me. And she said to me one time, do you know, the idea is that people are wealthy due to their past generosity. I was stunned. But the key word was past. Their past generosity in certain lives, and ours too, has led to these good material conditions. We have food, we have clothing, we have shelter, because we've helped others have that. Now, what do we do now if we don't continue with that and we start grasping and greedy? We are now creating the causes to not have it the next life. Why? Because the mind is tight and the mind is miserly. And you can just see when you open up and share how much it flows, you know. So that was a good thing for me to think about. Took down a lot of my righteousness about those people. So karma is complex that way. And it's all we sowed it, we reap it. Just one last thing, there is a purification, several of them, purification processes in Buddhism, and ways you can continue to work to improve the mind, and what they call burn the seeds of past karma. Like the seeds got sown, but you're not going to water them, you're not going to fertilize them. Those negative seeds, those suffering seeds got sown, but you stop fertilizing, watering, tending them, and they don't sprout. So those are the natural things of study the Dharma, contemplate the Dharma, do meditation, and do things that are beneficial for others. Then we don't have to worry. Yeah. Yeah, Sarah. This will be our last question today.
Is it on? Here it is. I was just kind of a comment on that. Like, I find it helpful. A big part of my practice is viewing the world in terms of spiritual aging, because beings. I think we tend to look at the world as humans, and we look at, oh, well, these people, they're humans, they're suffering. But the last life, they could have been an animal, just, eating and killing and stuff to survive. If they've moved up to being a human, they're doing quite well.
Yes.
Before that, they could have been on like a hell realm or something. I mean, they could have actually made considerable progress over many lives, and actually they're doing really well. I mean, like, what if they were, a cat in the previous life, and they couldn't speak, they couldn't hear the Dharma, and now they have access to language, they can hear things, and they're still surviving, and they're still kind of in that survival mode, but now they have, oh, what else is there? There's this other stuff, and they can explore that. And I tend to think that's a helpful way to look at it, not just like, oh, it's bad compared to where I'm at.
Yeah.
Because where I'm at might be pretty bad compared to a deva.
Yeah, to a goddess, yeah. Yeah, thank you. And the teachings are that in all the realms that have been recognized by realized masters, the human realm is the one that has the most opportunity for growth, because it has kind of a balance of the suffering and of the opportunity, whereas animal, not so much opportunity. God realms, so-called, don't have opportunity because they're lost in this kind of bliss of everything's so great, I don't need to practice anything, and then that karma ends and boom. So the human realm, the key is, in addition to what you shared, Sarah, is what we do with it. So we can have a human life, but it does not become precious until we use it to benefit others. So we can help beings who have human life do that, and that's what we're here for. Okay, let's dedicate. Thank you for all the good discussion and questions, for being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure. I mean, this is joy. You're welcome. Yeah.
By this virtue may I quickly realize Mahamudra and establish all beings without exception in this state.
Thank you. Have a good week. Maybe see some of you this evening or at Chenrezig on Wednesday.